everyone, my name is Jen Thompson, host of the Return to Jesus podcast. Thank you for joining us for the first season of the podcast, where I will be talking to some incredible guests who are also some of my dear close friends about returning to Jesus for grace, which is something we all need and want. My first guest, Elliott, who is also my mentor, is here to talk about the Enneagram in relation to grace. And I am so excited for you to hear from her and learn about this wonderful tool that has helped shape so much of my life and how I relate to others. It has been an incredible tool for me to learn more about the power of grace. I know you are going to absolutely love Ro and gain so much from her wisdom, gracious heart, and understanding. All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen, and I want to welcome you to the Return to Jesus podcast. I'm excited to talk with you about all things faith, family, relationships, with a lot of vulnerability, and hope that this will lead to healing and a closer relationship with the Lord in your own life. The Return to Jesus podcast has been born from my own personal need for Jesus and trying to understand what that relationship looks like at different seasons of my life. I currently find myself in a very busy season, stressful season. I feel overwhelmed quite a bit. And I would have to guess that many of you can relate to that feeling. So I have had to learn to give myself grace and to make time for him throughout the days in a variety of ways. So if you haven't had a chance yet and you want to learn more about what this podcast is going to be like, please go back and listen to my first episode, which is just a quick little introduction to the podcast. So this first season of the podcast is going to focus specifically on returning to Jesus for grace, which is something we all need and want. The people that I am interviewing in this first season are people that I know and love, like my guest who is patiently waiting here. These are people that are dear to my heart and just exude so much warmth and grace. So I am very excited to introduce my first guest, Elliott, who is my mentor and friend who has met with me regularly over coffee over the last couple years. She's just blessed my heart. I know she will bless yours as well. Ro is 66 years young and happily married to her best friend, who is also the most amazing person she knows. They have been married 42 years, and she couldn't be more grateful for the years they have spent together. They have been blessed with 5 adult children, 4 of whom are married and range in age from 41 to 28. Being a lolly to her 9 wonderful grandchildren brings her immense joy. In the past, Ro homeschooled her children. The years between 30 and 50 were incredibly challenging. She battled chronic illness, faced multiple miscarriages, and endured some painful experiences within the church community. However, as Ro reached her age of 50, she began to experience healing in both body and spirit and emerged stronger and more resilient. When her youngest child embarked on her own journey, she found herself feeling lost. Ro had to discover her identity and figure out what this new phase of life had in store. To navigate this transition, she pursued a narrative-focused trauma care certificate. This allowed Ro to gain a deeper understanding of trauma and its impact on individuals. Additionally, she became certified as an Enneagram Coach, which has been a fulfilling endeavor. Apart from cherishing her time with her grandchildren and family, she now offers Enneagram coaching services to individuals, couples, and groups. Ro, welcome.
Well,
Thank
it's such an honor, Jen. I love being on this journey with you and love watching you blossom.
Well, thank you. And I have to say, before we get started on the questions, I am so happy, like I told you before we started, that you are my first guest because you are always so gracious. You're so kind. And even before we started, like my headphones weren't working. I had to call somebody for help. I mean, my phone is buzzing, all these little things that I'm trying to figure out. And I'm just so glad it's you that is here today. So again, thank you so much. And if you're ready, we'll get started on the first question. Okay. So because the podcast is the Return to Jesus podcast, the first couple of questions are going to be focused on what it's like for you and your return to Jesus daily. And then the second part of questions will focus specifically on the Enneagram. Okay, I'm so excited to talk to you about because we're talking about grace. And I feel like when we went through the Enneagram together, really one of my biggest takeaways was just being more gracious with others. So to get started, when you hear the words return to Jesus, what does that mean to you? And what does that return look like personally in your life?
And I kind of sat with that. I thought for a minute, and the first word that popped into my head was home, to return home. And home is where we are known, we are seen, and we are completely loved. But that return home has been a long journey for me. So if you think about our houses, our own homes or the homes we lived in, if you don't feel fully seen, known, and loved as you age and come to those teenager years, I can say for me, going home was not something I really wanted to do. I wanted to be part of the family, but kind of be distant. And that's kind of how I was with God. I was part of the family, but I just wanted to keep a little separation because my view of God was twisted. And I had that very exacting, demanding. I thought I knew in my head that he loved me because he had to, because he was God. But I didn't have the imagination that he really loved me, like all of me, every dark, deep part of me. And what I love about Jesus is he doesn't leave us there. He doesn't sit with his arms crossed and say, okay, get it together, then you can come home. He comes out to woo us. And he wooed me home, and he wooed me with his love. He kept wooing me. And now I can say I feel completely at home in the presence of Jesus. And it's where I find shalom and rest. And when I think about abiding, it's just almost like laying on his chest. And we're not going to go towards somebody that we don't know loves us in any relationship, husband and wife, child to parent, but it's also God. So I would say people have troubles finding that return. I would just really encourage them to look at their view of the Father, because that may be where the hesitation to return to Jesus comes from. And that's part of my journey.
Yeah, that is beautiful. And I know that's something you and I have talked about before and that I can very much relate to. For a long time, my head said, God loves you, Jesus loves you. But my heart just couldn't catch up with this knowledge. This is this thing that everybody was telling me. I just didn't think I was worthy of that love. And you're right. There is a complete difference when you embrace that love. You want to return to it because it's not condemning. It's not angry. It's not looking for all the ways you've messed up. It's welcoming.
Yes.
And yeah, that was beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay, so another question for you, Ro. What are some spiritual practices and habits that you've incorporated into your life that work for you in the season that you find yourself in?
Okay. So I'm getting ready to turn 67. I have no kids at home. My schedule's very flexible. So this is the easiest time, honestly, to have a spiritual rhythm because I just don't have the interruptions. And even if I have to leave the house really early, I can set the alarm. And, children, I think, have this little honing device in them. When you're a young mom and you go, okay, I'm going to get up 30 minutes early before the kids get up. And they've been sleeping in, but that morning you decide to get up. All of a sudden, they're right there. And honestly, I just want to tell moms, don't get frustrated. I wish I didn't get as frustrated. How kind of horrible to greet your kids like, I'm trying to be spiritual. Not the best greeting. So I think there are seasons, and he meets us in every one of those seasons. And I just want to tell younger moms, take a big, deep breath and relax. That He will invite you. He will find you. And if you just open yourself up to those invitations, and even for me, when I was in my 30s and living with chronic illness, 3 small children, I didn't have time during the day. And so there were nights that I would hear that gentle whisper to wake up. And I was like, no. She's like, God, do you not know that I'm sick and that I need my sleep? And I'd lay there and kind of wrestle. But most of the time, I would get up in the middle of the night. And honestly, to this day, those are some of the most precious moments for me and the Lord, or the fellowship and the healing. I had time just to weep or just listen to him, let love speak to me. And so even if it's in just micro minutes throughout the day or getting up in the middle of the night, I just think listen to it as an invitation. He's inviting us all day long. He's not demanding it. He's inviting us. And he'll lead you. You don't have to strain and strive for it. So for me, currently 2 things that are probably the most therapeutic for me spiritually. And one started back in my 50s when my world was blowing up. I found Ann Voskamp's book, 1000 Gifts, and I started a gratitude journal. And that was maybe one of the most transformative things that happened in my life. And so now I don't have to write it down all the time. It's almost like it builds something in me, almost like I can go on treasure hunts during the day. And I think when you can find gratitude in the middle of the beauty and the hard and the difficult, and you can still find some small gift that God has given you, I think that helps us return back to that home, back to Jesus, back where we can find a little bit more peace if everything out there is chaotic. And journaling for me, I'm a very verbal processor. And journaling for me, somebody said pens have eyes. And sometimes I don't know what I think or feel until I'm journaling it down. And sometimes that is where I hear the most clear from the Lord. And then right now, one other thing is our church that we go to is doing a 2-year walk through the Bible. And there's just something powerful in doing it with community, doing it with my community group, probably your community group, but then we're in a larger community. And there's just something powerful about walking through the scriptures in community with other people.
Absolutely. I 100% agree. And I love that you specifically talked about the difference in seasons too, because I know sometimes, at least for me, when my children were younger, when I was a new Christian, I felt like I had to do this specific quiet time, and it had to happen in the morning, and it had to look this way, and it had to involve certain things. And I really became kind of hung up on that box needing to be checked off. And so it became almost like just another thing on my to-do list instead of what it's intended to be, which is, like you said, that invitation to meet with the Lord. And so I just love how you spoke about the different seasons. And I think, especially right now, we're talking about returning to Jesus for grace. I really hope that people are hearing that and letting that really just settle, that it doesn't look the same in every season. It doesn't look the same for everybody. Like you said, when you were in that time, your invitation was in the middle of the night when you didn't necessarily want to respond, but you did. And that was some of your sweetest times. So just to recognize that different seasons are different, but the invitation is always there. I just think that's just so beautiful and so powerful. And I absolutely love how you said that. Like I could listen to you all day long, Ro. Every time you talk, I'm just like, say more, say more.
One other funny place when my kids are really small, bathrooms are really sacred. Just let me tell you. Kids just, their fingers might be under the door, but it is a door that is shut, that they somewhat respect that. So the bathroom is a pretty sacred place. Just saying.
You said that. So It's so true. And now, my kids are bigger, so there aren't hands under the doors. But now we have these two little Persian cats, Zilly and Beans, that we love so much. And Beans follows me all day long like a child. And when I close the door to the bathroom, now her paws go under the door. And so they don't look like the kids' hands, but it's still pretty funny. Yeah. Sacred spaces. Sacred spaces. Okay. So one more question before we jump into the Enneagram. I'm so excited to talk to you about the Enneagram, but I just want to ask one question because we're talking about grace. And I think grace means a lot of different things to different people. And so I just want to know, what does grace mean to you, bro? What does grace mean to you?
Everything. Everything. All is grace. All is grace. And again, kind of like that journey back to Jesus, the journey home, to know that I was loved had to almost be the prerequisite for me to really receive grace. Because I was in a very transactional mindset with God. I do this, I get this. It was, just trying to earn my way into the heart of God when I was already sown deep into his heart and never had to earn one thing. And so that transition from trying to earn something that we cannot earn, that is just a gift given to us. And I was just at the beach recently, and every time I first walk to see the ocean and those waves are coming, it just reminds me, it is to me the most beautiful picture of God's loving grace. It is always coming toward us. It's always flowing toward us. We just have to stand there and receive. That's all he asks us to do. He just asks us to receive it. And it washes over us. And I think about love washing over us, and grace fills gaps in our life. And I honestly can say, if I look back through my life and I start in childhood, I had some pretty hard, deep suffering. You named some of those in the promo. But I look back at my life and I go, I've had such a blessed life. And to me, that's grace. I think without grace, you can't see the beauty coming out of the ashes, the transformation, the restoration that comes. That is a part of grace. It's always coming for us. He's writing a good story. It's written with grace in every line. We may not see it in the moment, but we hold that hope that grace is coming toward us all the time. So it was a mystery to me. I heard it and didn't understand it. And now it's maybe one of the most precious words to me is his grace.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And I love the picture of the ocean. I love you relating grace to an ocean, just that constant rhythm. It's always there. Again, the invitation. But it is hard. I know you and I have talked about different trauma woundings experiences, and it is hard when you have the image of this, transactional grace or God being this angry judge in the sky who's kind of looking for ways for you to mess up. And I just love how you said it changes everything. I think just to be able to embrace you are loved and every second of your day is covered in this free gift of grace. I think it's just so transformative, but hard. And I want to say to anybody who's listening that's well, that sounds great, but I'm not there. And that's fine too. It takes healing. It takes sometimes a while to get to that space. So there's no judgment for the people that aren't quite there yet, but there is something it's just so beautiful when you come to that space where you know it's there for you.
And we have to get ourselves there. That's that. Don't strain. He will win us. He wins us into these spaces. He wants us in these spaces more than we could ever even desire. And I think it's okay to be patient. Be patient with yourself because you're on a journey. And, it's been a long journey for me. This didn't happen overnight. And so I think if we can hold on to the grace and love that he is writing the story, and even if we don't understand it and feel it, he will not quit writing that story of love and grace into our life. And he will do the work. Like the guy in the Bible, I believe, help my unbelief. I said that all the time, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I don't know what your love is. So this doesn't feel like love, but you say you're loved. What don't I understand? Over and over and over again. And he met me and met me and met me. And if he can get me to receive his loving grace, I'm telling you, he can. He'll do it. Because I was not an easy one to allow to be transformed.
Well, and maybe just that in and of itself could be start of the return. If somebody's like, I don't even know how to return to Jesus, just
Yes.
that prayer
Yes.
that you just said, just make that prayer your prayer throughout the day, just asking him, I believe, help my unbelief. Show me you love me. God wants to hear from us. So just asking those things can be the start of the return.
Absolutely.
Just a couple seconds of prayer throughout the day.
Yes.
Excited to share with you that I have written a book titled Return to Jesus, an invitation to abide with him in every beautiful, stressful, or tedious moment. It is a dream come true, and I could not be more thrilled to share with you that this book is available online at stores such as Target, Walmart, Amazon, Christian Books, and more. The book will be available on April 15th, 2025 to purchase in store as well. And I just really appreciate your support. It means the world to me. I could not do this without you. And I'm just so very grateful. So be sure to grab your copy today. Again, it's Return to Jesus, an invitation to abide with him in every beautiful, stressful, or tedious moment. Well, thank you, Ro. And I am super excited because now we're going to jump into the Enneagram. I have had the blessing of going through the Enneagram with Ro. She took the time to teach me about it, and it just was really transformative in a way that I wasn't anticipating or expecting, but it has shaped so much of how I see things now. And I love that there's a faith component to it, and it's not just a personality test. There's so much more going on here. So, Ro, I'm curious. These feel like big questions. So I'm not sure if we can get through all of them or not, but we'll try. What is the Enneagram? Let's just start with that. For people that have never heard of the Enneagram and they're like, what is this word? What in the world are you talking about? What is it? And what made you personally want to dive into this? What gave you the heart for this?
So you're right. It's a Enneagram's surface answer, then it's this deep. But I think the simplest thing to describe the Enneagram, it is a tool that helps us understand why we think, feel, and do the things we do. It's not about what we do. There's other personalities typing tests, and they all have their space, but they kind of tell you your behavior. This tells you the why behind your behavior. And there's 9 numbers, and every number has a core fear and a core desire, a core weakness, and a core longing. And as you explore those, what I love about this in light of coming home, going back to Jesus, I think the Enneagram actually helps us walk us back to the true intent of who he created me to be, you to be, that essence that he put in us, our imago Dei, our image of God. And it helps us come back to understand that so we can live more into who he created us to be, not who we became in response to what the world told us to be. We live in a broken world and it breaks on us, and we develop coping mechanisms and ways to get through the world. this helps us remove some of those coping mechanisms so we can really live into our true identity of who God created us to be. So that's why I named my coaching business Imago Dei, because that's what I feel like it is precious to me. It is a gift to be on that journey with people and watch them blossom into who God created them to be.
Do you feel like you see a big transformation with most of your clients the first time you meet until the end? Do you notice a lot of transformation in people as they're going through this?
I have a client right now. I love her. She's the Enneagram 9. She's in her 50s. She's in that really hard transitional part of life. And I was sitting with her yesterday, and I just looked at her and I said, I am so proud of you, because this is not easy work. And it's almost like I can sometimes see the light bulb go off in somebody's head of understanding themselves. Oh, because a lot of the things we do are habitual and they don't feel negative. It's not like bad habits that put you in the ditch. It's just I had habitual habits that I was doing that I didn't realize, first of all, was not healthy for me and wasn't healthy for the people around me. And as we start unpacking that, it is hard. You've heard me say this before, but I think the cycle of life is to growth, if you want to grow, is we live with order and then we go through disorder so we can be reordered. And the Enneagram helps you go through that phase. When you do, the Enneagram is so much more than finding your number. I'm glad people find their number, but it's more than the meme, and it's more than what you talk about at a party. There's such depth and layers to it that if you can find that rhythm, and it's disruptive, but then if you come on the other side and you feel more whole, you feel more true, you feel more free. So you asked me how I found it. So at 58, I had a big age gap. So my youngest launched, I was 58. Being a homeschool mom, being a full-time mom, I did what I thought was good, but I put all my eggs in one basket. And what we realize is eggs hatch and they fly away. Your basket's empty. And I stood there empty and lost and going, what do I do? And I had 3 grandchildren at that time and really just thought, I'll just pour all that energy into my grandkids. And I just felt that whisper of God said, we're not going to do that. You're not going to do what you did with your children, with your grandchildren. And honestly, I was very puzzled by that. I had no imagination for what my life was going to be. A lot of people have dreams and they have desires. I had nothing. I had no imagination. God had something for me I didn't know. So I had to live my life differently. But I was still very lost and confused in that thought. And so my oldest daughter, sent the Enneagram test to our family, and we all started taking it. It was unbelievable how accurate it was and how helpful that would have been raising my kids. Side note, understand your kid's Enneagram number, you'll parent better. But when I read, I'm a 2, and when I read that, it was like it was reading the insides of me. And it made so much sense to so much of my past. It was describing exactly where I was. But what I loved, it helped give me a path forward. Because it was unknown charted waters, like boundaries, simple things like that. I didn't even know how to walk out that. And what I love is the Enneagram is a tool that it's like a guide. And it helps guide you into new spaces, more freedom to walk that out. And so, unbeknownst to me, my love for the Enneagram and what it did for me was what led me to become an Enneagram coach. And I want to help other, mainly women, but I do all kinds of guys and girls and teens and all kinds of things. But my heart is really women, so they can live more free.
That is fantastic. Well, I personally and selfishly am very grateful that you found yourself on that journey, because I have been blessed immensely, as I know anybody else that's had a chance to meet with you, whether on screens or face to face. I have no doubt their lives have been blessed and transformed. And so, have you noticed that you have more grace as a result of this? Because I know that was, like I said earlier, that was one of my really big takeaways. It was understanding myself, like you said, but also starting to recognize that they're not acting this way to be mean, or this might sound silly, but I think beforehand I kind of thought we all thought the same, like everybody thinks the same and
Yes.
experiences the world the
Yes.
same. And so, yeah, it was very, like, just eye-opening to, like, "Oh, wait, no, we don't all think the same. We don't experience the world the same. We absorb everything so differently." And so I know it's made me wanna understand people better and maybe be not as quick to judge people, even though I thought I wasn't a really judgmental person. I was like, "Oh, wait, maybe I'm more judgmental than I care to admit." So have you found that has it increased your capacity for grace for others now that you understand more about the Enneagram?
100%. I think that 2 words or 2 phrases is that I think Enneagram brings natural respect, and it is actually compassionate wisdom. It brings wisdom, but it brings compassion with it. And again, I think first it's toward ourselves. I think so many times we get frustrated with part of our gifting. Like, why am I like this? Why can't I just, why do I, for me, it's a 2, why do I have to walk into rooms and just absorb, feel all the feelings and what's wrong with me? And my husband wouldn't feel it. And I think, what's wrong with you? Yes. And there was nothing wrong with us. We were just different. And we would come out of social settings and my experiencing were totally different. And what I learned was it's the way God wired me. Now, what I had to learn as a sponge is not to soak it all in and hold on to it. I needed to learn to take it in and squeeze it out, so to speak. That was my work to do. Yeah. And so we can't give away what we don't have. And I actually think the Enneagram helps us accept beauty side of us and become compassionate with the more shadow side as it finds more healing and grace in our lives. And if I'm finding that for myself, I'm going to give that to you. And if you think about the Enneagram, it's like almost like 9 different lenses, and say, I wear a blue lens and you wear a green lens. The Enneagram helps us just kind of borrow. I can borrow your green lens and look through the world and go, I would have never thought that way. That's not the way to think about it. I'm not going to change necessarily. It's how I take in information in the world, but I can have more respect that you're going to take in it. That makes sense. I think it takes away judgment. It just does toward ourselves first and then toward the world around us.
That is fantastic. That really just shows this compassion for everybody around you. So now you talked a little bit about their 9 numbers. You and I are both 2s. So we're feeling all the feels all the time, feeling all the feels. Can you give a brief, I guess, explanation of what are the 9 numbers and where might they struggle to both give and accept grace? So what are the different Enneagram numbers and how would they maybe relate to grace?
And I think that's really the cool thing. And if you really kind of go back to the core longing that I'm going to say in each number, if you think of yourself as a child, that's what you were hungry for. That's what you were looking for. And when we don't get it fully, because we live in a broken world and we can be the best parents that we can be, but we're human. So no human is fully ever going to meet these deep longings and desires. But the gospel of grace speaks to every one of these longings, to each individual. And everybody wants to be loved and everybody wants to be seen, but there's the deeper longing for each number in that way. So we'll just start with type 1. Type 1, those are the reformers. Some people call them the perfectionists. They have that core fear of being wrong or being corrupt or being seen as not good. Of all the numbers, they probably struggle with grace the most because they are always trying to reform themselves, improve themselves. And so just to receive grace is very hard. Their core longing is you are good. You're good. The gospel, the cross took care of that. And just to receive that from Jesus helps heal. My analogy is we have buckets and we have holes in our buckets and we walk around and we want other people. So for one, tell me I'm good. Tell me I'm right. And it just kind of falls out the bottom of the bucket. When we allow Jesus to come and fill those holes, meet those needs, then he wants people to pour into us, but they are just adding to the foundation that Christ already has. And then we're not looking for other people to tell us who we are. We already know her. So the core longing for 1 is, I am good. For 2, the helpers, our fear is being not loved, being rejected, and unwanted. So we, from a small child, we were looking to know that we were wanted and that we were loved. So now that makes sense what my journey, why that was so hard for me, was because my longing. Somebody else, that love piece wouldn't be as much, but that was at the very bottom of the longing in my heart. And the world was hard on me and didn't believe I was loved. And when that got sealed for me, game changer. So type 3, they are the achievers. Their fear of failure, they want to be successful. They need a lot of affirmation. And 3s have high energy. They are always doing. They are earning their kudos, so to speak, by doing. And we talk about 3s being human doings instead of human beings. Their core longing is to know that they are loved for just who they are, not for what they do. The 4s are the romantic individualists. They have a fear of not being unique, special. They have a fear that there's something very flawed with them, like something's innately wrong with them. And so their longing is to be seen, completely seen and accepted in their uniqueness, because they feel very different than the rest of the world around them. We have our 5s, and they're the investigators. They probably one of their biggest fears is being depleted of the energy because they have fixed energy on the Enneagram. It's very fixed and they can feel it and they don't want to be depleted. They feel like if too much is asked for them, they're just going to be annihilated almost. And with that, they have a hard time bringing their needs to other people because it feels like it's too much. But really their core longing is to know that your needs are not too much. Your needs, you're not a problem.
Well, and I have to say, being married to a 5, it was huge for me to understand that. Like as soon as I learned about the 5, I was like, oh my goodness, so much makes sense. Even when Pat and I would have conversations and I would want to talk. And he'd be like, whoa, give me a minute, or we're making decisions about something in the house. And, he wants to find out about every single minivan before we commit to purchasing one. But now I see like that. So these gifts, like we really balance each other out. Like I've always said, he's the yin to my yang, and it's just given me a deep appreciation. And I feel like we relate to each other a little
Yes.
bit better now that we've both started to learn about this because we give each other the grace. I understand he doesn't go walk into a room and feel what every single person's feeling and need to talk to them about their emotions or take them a meal next Friday because they're having a bad day. That's not on his radar at all. So, anyways, sorry to
No,
interrupt, but
but
as you talked about the
that's a
5, I just had
beautiful
to.
example. And I mean, just to nuance that a little bit more, like their stances, and the 5 is in the dependent stance, which means they go outside themselves to feel loved, to feel needed. Well, Pena is in the withdrawing stance. He pulls away to get his needs met. You go out to get your needs met. And, you were chasing him and he's going, where are you? But that's the respect. He doesn't have to become you and you don't have to become him. He can go toward you in ways he wouldn't naturally do because he understands you now, and you can back away in ways you wouldn't naturally do because you understand him. And that missing each other goes on all day long. I could go on the value of this in relationships and marriages. It's a game changer. It helped Mark and I. We were married, 41 years, and I saw things that's like, oh, this makes so much sense. A place that I go, what's wrong with you? And for him to understand me.
I know we're just starting on this podcast journey, but even the fact that you said that there's so much that can be said about that, I feel like it has to be so healing and beneficial for people to learn about the relationships and how people, like you said, to fly by each other, miss each other, or just not understanding each other because we don't understand those core values and longings and behaviors that are just intricately a part of us. So, yeah,
And
I love
just the
that.
small ticks that I've been able to watch couples make, they're not like these quantum leaps. I mean, pretty small, that ended up bringing great space to their marriage. It's phenomenal. So we digress. So we're almost through. Type 6, we're in type 6. They're the loyalists. They are afraid of fear itself. They are very afraid of being without guidance. They want security. They want safety. And their longing is to know that they are safe. My daughter's is 6. And I think about her being able to grow as she matures and grows to really know that she is completely safe, she has guidance, she has security, and that fear that can just overtake a 6 in that, when that's anchored in Jesus, that's just such a huge game changer. The type 7 are optimists. They are so afraid of being trapped in fear. They like fun. They are the king and queens of FOMO. What's next? What's next? What's next? So their fear is being trapped in emotions, negative emotions. They're like a half range of emotions, all the happy ones. So because they're always going on to the next thing, the fear, the longing under that is that I'll be taken care of. That I don't have to go meet all my needs. I will be taken care of. So 8, they are the challengers. Their fear is being weak, powerless, or controlled. So in that, they want to control the environment because what's underneath that, they have a core longing that they would not be betrayed. It's part of their fear and their longing. And so just think that Jesus, the ultimate one who never betrays us. People will fail, but Jesus never fails. And last but not least are 9s, the peacemakers. Their fear is conflict, tension, and being ignored or not being seen for who they are, because they can step back and lose their voice a lot. And their core longing is your presence matters. And again, all those core longings, really, if people will spend some time, they can go back to their childhood and think, that's what I was looking for all along. And that's where we get to walk back and let Jesus come and heal that in us, and then learn how to let go of some of those coping mechanisms that harm us and harm the people around us, because we no longer have to strive for that.
So what should people do if they're interested in learning about their Enneagram number or diving more into this? Because, you just skimmed the absolute top surface talking about all of the different numbers. And like you said, there are so many levels and layers to this, and it really is so healing and so transformative. So what do people do if this has sparked a curiosity in them? What would the next step be?
Um, Tests are about 60% right, but that's not a bad starting point, because you can get like your top 3 numbers. I think you can get so far in reading material on it. You can get the road back to you, and that's kind of like the primer that goes through all the numbers, and it's good just to read. So you can, again, get out of, it's not what I'm doing, it's why. So we all kind of do the same thing, but the reason I'm doing it and the reason somebody else is doing is 2 totally different things. What I'm trying to get out of it and what a 3 is getting out of it. If I go into help and a 3 goes into help, I'm looking to be wanted and needed. They're looking for the pats on the benefits, the attaboys. 2 different things. It looks the same, but the motive is different. And I'm just going to be honest, and at this age affords you, this is how I strongly feel. I don't think we can go on growth journeys by ourselves. So whether it's an Enneagram or anything else, I think we have to have other people, periods of times in our life, what I think is called a compassionate witness to us. We have to get out of our own echo chamber. And I think we need an Enneagram coach, a spiritual director, a counselor, a mentor, somebody who's sitting outside our circle. Because part of it too, yes, we need to deal with some hard things, but we can't call out the beauty in ourselves. That sounds strange, but we have a hard time naming the beauty in us. And sometimes we have the hard time naming the shadow sides, but I think it's both. And we need another voice, somebody to ask those good questions, like a mirror to reflect. And I really think we can't grow just in ourselves. I don't think it's how God created us. I think He created us for community, whether it's just 2 people, whether it's going to celebrate recovery, care, divorce care, all those things. There's ways to grow outside ourselves. I just think it's just too valuable. And my mantra is like, go get help. People struggle. And, I got one thing to say. And I did it solo for so long, but counseling and all this kind of stuff wasn't there 30 years ago. But since then, I have been to counseling and I have done work, and I can tell you this, I was part of an Enneagram cohort, and we were doing this exercise, and I answered all the questions and didn't even realize that I had answered them all with other people in mind, not myself. That is very 2-ish. I didn't even know I did it until they said, Ro, do you realize? So you can be an Enneagram coach. There's no arrival point. That's what I'm trying to say. All throughout life, we have to go on these journeys, but I think we need guides. I think Jesus brings people their skill sets in life that help us go on these transformational journeys that are it's just so worth it. We are making impacts. We are impacting the world around us. We have to decide what kind of impact we want to bring and leave. And some people are bringing really good impact, and some people are bringing kind of harmful impact. And we don't know it all the time. And so that's my heart at this stage of life, is to encourage people, do the work. Because what is not transformed in our life is transmitted. And you cannot change what you can't name. I transmitted so much onto my kids, and God's grace was there. But I think our world right now has so much help. for us to be more who God created us to bring and bring more beauty into the world. Part of me, I think it's an exciting time because I think God's brought wisdom and understanding in ways we have not understood the human psyche before. And it can be such a blessing if we'll tap into doing the work with the Lord in it.
That is so incredibly beautiful. And just to see even how you have been transformed and how you've pursued this healing for yourself. And that, like you said earlier, you found yourself in a space after your youngest left and you had your grandchildren. You're like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And you made a choice to pursue all of this. And now the Lord is using you to then bless others with the healing journey that you've been on. I know I receive it almost weekly, and it is such a gift. And I agree wholeheartedly that we are not meant to do this on our own. Like when you even talk about the echo chamber, I have been in that echo chamber so many different times in my life, and it has not been a pleasant place to be. So just having somebody to speak with, a mentor, a guide, a therapist, an Enneagram coach, like you said, these different groups that people can join. Just there is so much beauty in pursuing healing in our lives. And I think the Enneagram is an incredible tool, one of many tools, like you are saying, one of many ways that we can just pursue a depth of understanding of ourselves and others and the Lord and healing ultimately. Is there anything else you want anybody to know about the Enneagram or the Enneagram in relationship to grace before we close out?
You know, I think it's a valuable tool. And we can't give away grace unless we receive it. And however God can bring healing into our souls, whether it's through the Enneagram or a class or whatever you want to do. But life is an inside out job. It's got to be in here first before we can give it away. And God wants us to live grace filled lives. He wants us to receive all the grace he has. And those barriers that were in my life, that are in everybody's life, is just a very practical tool to remove some of those barriers that keep us from receiving the gospel of grace. And when we can really live in the gospel of grace, we are living pretty free. And we are giving out to the world around us something way more valuable than the world is looking. Everybody wants to be seen and known and loved. And if we can live out that toward people because we know we are seen, known, and loved, and God's grace has brought it all to us, we will give that to other people more readily. And that's my encouragement. Go on the journey. Go on the journey. He's there with you. He'll walk you into it, whether you're using the Enneagram or whatever. He wants to walk you. He wants to return you back home. He wants to return you back to the garden. Let's go back to the garden where we were planted, and let's walk out forward full of grace, mercy, and light.
So beautiful. So beautiful. So if they've heard this and they're inspired and they're looking for an Enneagram coach, how can people find you, Rose?
Well, I have a website in process, but I don't have one yet. So that would have been an easy way. I don't know if you can just drop my email. Do you have like something at the bottom?
I can absolutely do
So
that.
you just put my email in the bottom in the show notes. I guess that's what they're called. And people can just email me. And then one day I will have a website to go to. But just reach out and email and I'll be in contact.
Fantastic. Well, Rose, thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom that you've shared with all of us. And just thank you for the beautiful human that you are. It is truly just an honor, a privilege, and a joy to know you. And you're one of the greatest gifts that God has brought to my life. So I just thank you. And I'm excited for people to hear from you and just to get to know you in this way.
You're,
Thank you, Ro. I
let me just
appreciate
say, you're a
you.
gift in my life. The blood, it flows both ways. And we come alongside each other, and you're just a joy and a gift. And I can't wait for your book to come out in the world. And I encourage everybody, when it does, and when pre-orders happen and all that good stuff, it will be worth the read. So I'm excited for that.
Well, thank you for saying that. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in to my first ever interview on this podcast with Ro. I appreciate it so much. And I hope you tune in next week. Thanks. Have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to my first podcast interview. If you like what you heard, be sure to subscribe. Also, for more content, you can find me at trulyyoursjen.com and on Facebook and Instagram at trulyyoursjen. Be sure to tune in next week for my conversation with my friend, the very talented singer, songwriter, and winner of Season 7 of The Voice, Craig Wayne Boyd.